Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode number 24 of the Voices of Boyle podcast. This week we're joined by Liz Milham, who is a registered herbal medical practitioner and also runs the Herbal Medical Clinic on Main Street. In this episode, Liz is going to shed some light on how herbal remedies can complement medical interventions and provides valuable insights into their safe and effective use. And also throughout the episode, Liz dispels some misconceptions about herbs, reminding us why they may not be universally effective for everyone. And she also recommends seeking advice before incorporating herbs into her health regime in order to ensure a more personalised fit. We also learn about the significance of good digestion for overall health and the role of herbal medicine in treating the root cause of conditions rather than just alleviating the symptoms all the time. So if the fascinating world of alternative medicine is something you're interested in, then this is an episode you shouldn't miss. So let's get into it.
Hi Liz, and welcome to the Voices of Boyle podcast. We're delighted to have you on.
Welcome, Liz.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Liz, just to start off, to kick things off, could you tell us a little bit about your qualifications and why you chose Boyle to set up your business?
Okay. Well, I started my professional career in mental health many years ago. So I was a qualified psychiatric nurse. And then I went on and got a postgraduate qualification in counselling at university. And then I kind of did it all backwards. I took an honours degree in philosophy and psychology, and then I did my herbal training. So I have a diploma in herbal medicine, and that took me 7 years to complete part-time. So
7.
Yeah.
And have you any other qualifications in that field or anything else?
I'd done a lot of sort of preliminary courses, like home herbalist courses and sort of one-off things, because I've always been interested in herbal medicine. And then I decided to formalise my qualification and did a professional training.
Okay.
And Liz, before you came to Boyle, then you were in the UK?
Yes. Yeah.
For many years?
Yeah, all my life. Well, most of my life, yeah. And I moved to Boyle about 7 years ago.
Lovely. And why Boyle? Did you have connections?
Not really. It was a bit of, it's one of those sort of synchronicity moments. It just kind of happened, really. And we've not looked back. We absolutely love living here.
Do you love it?
Yeah.
Because some people would say, what drew you to Boyle of all places?
Yeah, it was just kind of an accident, a very pleasurable accident. But we just absolutely adore living here. And it's actually very like the Cornwall that I grew up in. So there are a lot of similarities, although it's a different culture, living in a small town, and there's kind of unspoken rules about living in a small town, which I kind of understood from living in a small town. So, yeah.
You were prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah, so can you provide an overview of Western traditional herbal medicine and how it differs from other herbal medicine traditions?
Yeah. So traditional Western herbal medicine is generally practiced in Europe and North America. And it's been around for thousands of years. There is evidence of prehistoric peoples using the local plants and things as medicines. But probably when it started being written down in sort of the Greek and Roman times, that's kind of when it became a little bit more formalised. It's based in a holistic model of health, which is very different to the medical model of health. And it uses whole herbs, not extracts of herbs, as treatment. So by holistic model, I'm talking about constitution. So, how someone is built, put together.
Their lifestyle. Everything.
Yeah. And the state of the tissues involved, is it hot, cold, dry, wet, tense or relaxed? And also the pattern of disease. So we're looking how the disease manifests in the body and where it stems from. So, for example, a heat-based condition could include inflammation, and dryness often presents as weak digestion. When herbs are used and prescribed, not only are we looking at what herb is suitable for that organ system, but also is it a damp quality herb, or is it a drying herb, or does it warm things up, or does it cool things down? So that's how we kind of choose herbs to treat people. So we're always looking for the root cause of a condition. So, for example, two people coming in with high blood pressure could have very different causes to that high blood pressure. So although a herbalist would probably use herbs that help with blood pressure, what they're also treating is what is causing the high blood pressure, for example.
Okay, and so with the similarities then with, just say, for example, homeopathy, who also take a kind of a constitutional overview of lifestyle and everything.
Yeah.
The herbal medicine industry is also aligned to the same kind of ideas.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
A holistic approach.
Yes, yeah. There's no point really in using herbs like pills, because they may or may not work for you, depending on whether they suit your condition or not. That's why often people get a bit disappointed when they go into, a shop that sells herbal remedies. They've read about something online and they think, oh, I'll take that for my arthritis. And then it doesn't really have an effect, because they're just using the one herb and it may not suit, their condition.
Everyone's different.
Yeah, everyone's different. And herbalists generally blend several herbs together in an individualized prescription to kind of balance out the body, give the body some support where it needs it.
Brilliant, Liz. And just, I suppose, to the very basics. So you have your practice in Main Street in Boyle.
Yes.
So somebody walks into you and they're saying, I have low energy, or I have high blood pressure, or arthritis, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
What is the process? How does it work?
Well, if it's a very acute situation, like a cough or a cold or something like that, I can just have a quick 10-minute chat with them, and I've got some ready-to-go remedies for that may all be appropriate, or if they're not, I can just make one. If it's something more chronic, then that would require a consultation, which takes about 90 minutes. So that's by appointment, by mutual appointment. And I go through everything. I go through what the problem is, their health history, what's going on in their life, what they're eating, whether they're exercising or not, are they drinking enough water, everything. And I also go through all the different body systems, picking out, is there a symptom here? Is there a symptom there? And quite often people say, oh, I feel like a bit of a wreck, really. I didn't realise I had so many things wrong with me. But, if you sit down and think about it, we probably all have some niggle or other somewhere. And then once I've got the whole picture, then I'll make diet changes, recommendations. I might recommend, that they go for a walk 20 minutes every day or something if they're not exercising much. The biggest advice I tell people is to drink more water. Yeah, people don't seem to drink enough. And it's not necessarily a conscious thing, just not in the habit of doing it or really think about it.
And obviously the quality of water as well.
The quality of the water, yeah.
Distilled water, which is what we have been using for a few years now. There's another form then, reverse osmosis water.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the quality of water is a big thing as well. Yeah,
at the very least, the tap water should be filtered. So,
And then a lot of people then do be worried, well, if the water is distilled, for example, that you're not getting the minerals that are added to the tap water.
Right.
But, if you're eating a balanced diet, you're going to get enough minerals that way.
Exactly, yeah.
One thing that I'm kind of interested in is, from a healthcare point of view, the phrase traditional Western herbal medicine is an oxymoron, in that, for example, in Western culture, herbal treatments are considered alternative. So could you touch on that?
Yeah, they are these days, but that used to be the medicine of Western people. And that was the traditional way that you went about your healthcare, was to go and see the apothecary or have a herbalist come to the house. Famous examples are Culpeper. He was a bit of a renegade because he translated all the Latin texts into English so that people could read them and understand them and use them at home. So that's why it's traditional, because it has always been around.
Because nowadays, traditional they're kind of flipped in terms of alternative treatments were traditional.
Yes.
And now we've gone into the whole allopathic model of healthcare.
Yes.
Which is just plugging the symptoms and not actually getting to the root cause.
Yes.
So we've kind of got lost in our way over the...
A little bit, yeah.
But I think people are... What do you think, Liz? I think people are kind of going back to the older methods.
They certainly, they certainly are. And what's great about Ireland is that there is still that herbal tradition there. And, you know, a lot of people's grandparents used herbs all the time to treat general sort of, you know, everyday common ailments and things.
Yeah.
So it's just under the surface. It's hasn't gone very far. And, of course, being in Main Street... people, you know, I just kind of feel like I'm part of the town, and people just come in and have a chat and ask things, and it's really great.
They're more kind of curious as well.
Yeah.
Because I think we've, as well as becoming lost in the kind of traditional way of medicine, people are very quick to, when they have a cold or a flu now, they just go down to the GPs for everything, because they expect a pill or a drug just to plug the hole, if you like. So while they're not prepared to just maybe look into alternative treatments, or just, as you said, even drink more water in a lot of cases can help with. I
think a lot of it is down to they just don't realise. You know, we don't really talk about drinking water that much, and because of the health provision with allopathic medicine, that's what people are trained to think. You know, that's what you do to stay healthy. It's just that it's been forgotten, and hopefully now that there's this new emergence of people being more health conscious, people will think of alternatives.
It's interesting as well, because I think in today's modern climate on social media, if you say you prefer herbal medicine as opposed to big pharma, all of a sudden now you're anti-big pharma.
Yeah,
you can't have a preference. You're either this way or that way.
Yeah, it does seem to be a bit of a dichotomy there, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, I think there's room for both. For example, in trauma medicine, you can't beat, you know, going to the hospital and the drugs that they use are absolutely, utterly life-saving.
Yeah,
antibiotics, absolutely, utterly life-saving. The problem is the over-reliance on it. So now we've got a bit of an antibiotic crisis, and you know, people are often being very overprescribed. But
you were talking
I read a book about that, just how, because they've been overprescribed for little things that you mightn't necessarily need them for, that one day they will just be all immune to them. Yeah. And that's when the trouble will start, really.
Yeah, I did my dissertation on the antibiotic crisis, and the environment, and herbal medicine. Yeah, that was my kind of thing.
Scary stuff, I'd say, at the same time.
It is. But antibiotics are absolutely essential, but we mustn't overuse them. You have to really respect them. And the same with a lot of pharmaceutical medicines. They're extremely powerful. And quite often you don't need that sledgehammer to crack a health nut. You just, need a gentle, supportive, gradually changing, allowing the body to find its own sort of equilibrium, rather than powerful chemicals really to force change. But sometimes, in extreme situations, that's absolutely what you need. So
it's just to get it right, I suppose. And our bodies have so much healing power in themselves, so give them a chance.
Absolutely,
give them a chance.
So Liz, can you share some examples of conditions or ailments that can be effectively treated with herbal medicine?
It's kind of a difficult one, really, because we're not allowed to make any medicinal claims for herbs. But people who have come to the clinic, they've presented with things like menstrual disorders. I've seen a lot of ladies suffering with menopausal symptoms, urinary symptoms, respiratory symptoms, cardiac issues like high blood pressure, obviously not extreme high blood pressure, but sort of mild hypertension and things like that, coughs, colds, flu, skin conditions, like chronic things like psoriasis or acne or acne rosacea, things like that. So it's kind of very wide-ranging and varied.
And they can be effectively treated like?
Well, my patients are happy. So.
That's great.
You can't make promises.
Of course. And when it comes to selecting and preparing herbs, how do you go about that for your practice? Is there a...
Did you grow a lot of them yourself?
I grow some. Okay. I forage some. And I also use reputable professional herbal suppliers. So there are a few around. Brexit was a bit of a challenge, but thankfully there are some Irish companies now that are very good. So they have like a principle under which they operate, and I kind of look for the ones that are a bit more eco-friendly and a bit more aware of, you know, the plants themselves and what they're doing. That it's not just like a big industrial sort of churn out thing that they import from all over the world, and the herbs look very sad and sorry when they arrive. So
that's good, Liz. And just what would be the most basic ones? So like we hear of obviously some of the most common ones, but what would be the ones you use the most?
Oh gosh, it tends to go in runs. So one week I might use loads and loads of dandelion root, and then another week I might use loads of, I don't know, calendula, or I use a herb called Oregon grape quite a lot. It's really good for sort of general body support, supports the liver. It's really good for skin conditions and things like that. There's so many. It's really difficult to pick a few.
And nettle as well.
Nettle. I use an awful lot. What else do I use? I'm trying to think. Agrimony is one that I use quite a lot. Yarrow, I use nearly all the time. Yeah.
Interesting. You mentioned dandelion root because we give up coffee for 2 years, and dandelion root is a very popular.
It is
a coffee alternative.
It certainly is.
It's called Dandy Blend.
Okay,
I used to get it off Amazon, but it's really nice. It has a very distinct taste.
They roast it just like coffee.
So I didn't miss coffee at all in 2 years. Now back on coffee, but
people thought we were mad.
Yeah, they were saying, "What are you drinking? Dandelion roots?" And I was like, "You got to try it."
Yeah, it's great.
But it was actually a kind of a good alternative. It really was.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you can make your own by digging up the roots.
Yeah, a friend of ours
scrub them all, chop them up, and roast them in the oven. Or dry them first, and then I
think a friend of ours did it.
He did it. Yeah.
It's labour intensive though.
It is. We were just like, let's buy the bag.
But it shows like there's many alternatives out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some common misconceptions about the herbal medicine industry, and how would you address them if there are any?
Gosh, well, there's a few. One is, as we briefly touched on before, that herbs don't really work, and that's often for two reasons. One is because there's a lot of press that, we don't know enough about this herb, so we can't recommend it, and and the other is people go into a shop and buy something that they've read about, and it may or may not suit them. So there's that. The other misconception is that herbs are safe because they're natural. Generally, they are very safe, but you have to be careful because, especially if you're taking pharmaceutical medicines, there can be interactions. So you really need to ask advice, or ideally come and have a consultation, and then you get your own blend. Also, herbs may be wrong. So, for example, I've had a few people who are taking turmeric or cinnamon as anti-inflammatories, which is great, and cinnamon for balancing blood sugar, which is great. But they suffer from constipation. Now, those two herbs are very constipating. So it kind of makes their constipation worse, which, if you don't have good digestion, it's very difficult to get good health if your digestion doesn't work properly.
So would you, in that instance, Liz, supplement then with something else to aid the digestive system?
Yeah, I would tell them to stop taking the cinnamon the turmeric, and then look at what's going on.
Find something better that works for them. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Would that have to be a large quantity of turmeric on a daily basis, or is it just like a kind of capsule full of some self-made tablets or stuff like that, capsules? Or is it?
I suppose everyone's different.
Oh, what that I prescribe?
No, that if you say people are finding that they're finding constipation.
Yeah, it depends on the individual, because some people are very prone to constipation and some aren't. So it just depends, and it might be just that they're not drinking enough water, which a lot of people don't. So it's always looking at the root cause. What is it that's going on here? What is the body trying to tell us? What is it expressing? What is it trying to do? Because there is an innate intelligence in the body that always moves to, balance. And why is the body behaving like this? What is it trying to shift or move to come to a balance? So, yeah, that's what we're looking at.
Great. That's just one good example then of how important it is to have an overview rather than just treating one thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can't use herbs like a pill. They just don't work like that.
Yeah. And what role does nutrition play in?
Absolutely fundamental.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would your kind of ideal nutritional plan be for someone? I suppose that depends on the ailment, I suppose. Then.
Yeah, it depends on the person, and because everyone's a bit different, what is good for one person isn't good for another. If someone has very low energy, for example, I would say don't do intermittent fasting. I would say eat more regularly until the symptoms subside, and then obviously they can do what they like. But ideally, people should aim to eat 7 portions of fruit and vegetables a day, different ones, and eat the rainbow, I say to people. Yeah, as many colours as you can. Little bit of protein with each meal, a small amount of carbohydrate, unless you're very active or a child, and then you would need more. But keep the dairy down.
Dairy, yes, that's a trigger for a lot of people.
Sometimes I advise people to come off dairy, especially if they have like sinus problems and things like that. Very mucousy problems, and quite often they discover that they have a dairy intolerance that they didn't realise before, and that's why they've had this chronic problem.
A lot of people have come off dairy, like you said, and they've found their skin condition, their rosacea, eczema, just literally within a few days.
Psoriasis.
Yeah, because if you're constantly eating dairy and you have an intolerance and you don't know, well, of course, you're never going to be healthy.
No, your liver's going to be very overburdened dealing with it all, and your immune system is going to be on high alert because it causes, if you have a food intolerance, it causes a thing called leaky gut, where the cells of the lining of the intestine are slightly open and things move into the bloodstream that shouldn't, and that sets up an immune reaction.
Is that related to diverticulitis or?
No, it's slightly different.
Okay.
Yeah. So people's immune systems are on high alert all the time, and it might present as a digestive issue, or it might present as the fact that they're getting coughs and colds and every illness under the sun all the time and things like that. And the liver is obviously having to detox all of that stuff and process it all.
And would you recommend, Liz, for people to go and get an allergy test before they come to see you, or would that be just for some people depending on what their complaint is?
Yeah, it depends. Usually it's quite straightforward to suss out. So you look at the symptom picture. Sometimes I ask people to keep a food diary for a couple of weeks where they write down everything that they eat and drink and when. And then in another column, they write down if they have any symptoms, and it becomes very clear.
It's vital, isn't it?
Yeah, people can see for themselves that
even after a few days, we've done that a few times, and even after a few days you can see the patterns.
So sometimes it's a bit more obscure, and I might suggest they go and see a nutritionist. I collaborate with a nutritionist, and she's really good, and she obviously has more in-depth approach to the diet than I do. So
that was actually one of the things I wanted to ask, is how do you work in collaboration with other medical professionals in order to integrate the herbal medicine into their lifestyle? So
I don't collaborate as much as I would like to, but people like nutritionists or massage therapists and things like that, everyone's always happy to take referrals, and that's really good. There's a couple of labs as well that are quite good to chat things through with, symptom picture through with. and they can make suggestions. I would love to work more closely with the GPs, but the closest I've got to that really is asking a patient to go back for a medication review, and quite often they come out and they've slashed the amount of medications they're on, and it's like, great, now we can get started with it.
And is there, when you say you'd like to work with GPs, is there still that kind of little division that's
there is, yeah, not everyone, but there is a caution, because they don't really know about herbs, so they don't really understand
our nutrition.
So it's getting better, but it would just be really nice if someone wanted to kind of work with both, or it would be really nice to have that dialogue, but it's not always possible.
Hopefully there'll come a day where it will be.
I hope so. Yeah, I do hope so.
It might be a long way off, but hopefully someday it will come.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of a misperception about what herbalist actually is, really, as well.
So what advice would you give to someone that's interested in incorporating herbal medicine into their lifestyle? Not as a prophylaxis, but more as a everyday, I want to use herbs for general health.
Well, I would advise them to read every book they can get their hands on. Try out recipes using herbs from the garden. Maybe even do a home herbalist course or day courses or something like that, just to learn more about how they work and what they can use. And because I think generally people's perception of herbs is quite limited, but I use well over 100 herbs in my practice. So, there are a lot of herbs around.
Spectrum,
So, yeah.
And are there any home remedies that you could suggest to listeners that they could try out in the comfort of their own home that would be easy to try out for themselves?
Gosh, there's lots. So putting a few slices of ginger in your tea can really help with your digestion, helps with, if you're feeling sick, especially if it's a sort of a liverish sickness. And it's also a great anti-inflammatory. There's a lovely tea that's equal parts of yarrow, mint and elderflower that is absolutely fantastic for colds, the congestion that you get with colds and coughs and things. And if you sweeten that with a bit of honey and a squeeze of lemon, it's even better. What else? Thyme tea can be really nice for a cough, for like a respiratory infection. Might need other herbs with it, but it's quite nice tasting. All the culinary herbs, like rosemary, thyme, oregano, all of those, because they're very aromatic and they have a lot of oils in them, they're really good for the digestion as well. So just having a cup of rosemary tea or something after, especially a heavy, greasy meal, could really help.
So if you were coming down with a cold or a flu, what would be your go-to mix that you kind of say, well, I'm going to just try this to see if it gets rid of it before it kind of gets worse?
So I would, if I was coming down with something, I would take echinacea to kind of support the immune system. And also echinacea has some antimicrobial properties as well. And then depending on the symptom picture, I might add in something like horehound, yarrow. Obviously the elderflower, mint and yarrow tea is really good for just helping to clear things. Honey and lemon tea is really nice for feeling a bit under the weather. You can add in some elderberries as well, because they're quite antiviral, and they've been actually tested and they've shown that they can shorten the flu if you have it, and they can help prevent the infection, getting quite so bad.
I know a guy, a friend of mine in the UK, and he drinks elderberry soup, as he calls it, every day.
Oh, right. Yeah, it can be a bit laxative if you have a lot of it. So.
He hasn't reported any cause, but as you said, everyone's different.
Everyone's different, indeed.
Could be a good thing.
If you grow a herb called elecampane, you can dig the roots up after 2 years, scrub it up, slice it and put it in honey. And then as the winter approaches, you can have a little bit of root every day. I told my sister about that, and she was doing that, and then she caught COVID, when that first wave of COVID came, and she was really poorly. But I think had she not been looking after her respiratory system, it could have been a lot worse. So, Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And just on the subject of COVID there, did you see a big spike in people looking for more alternative, quote-unquote, remedies?
Well, we weren't really allowed to practice during COVID,
okay.
But I have treated a lot of people for the post-COVID symptoms, that post-viral fatigue and everything. And now that, we're allowed to be around and open.
Yeah.
There are, some really good flu-type herbs, antivirals and things that can really help. So, yeah.
And I think the important thing, Liz, is to just look after your immune system all the time.
Yes.
Because then you're just giving your body the strength it needs, that when something does hit, you're not overloaded and things like that. And I think a lot of people are trying to do that now.
Yeah. It's all down to your daily habits.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. Are you eating well enough? Are you eating your 7 a day? Are you drinking enough water? Are you exercising? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you managing your stress? Are you expressing your spirituality, if that's something that's important to you? Are you resting enough?
There's a lot to get right, but yeah.
And would you like to see a day, Liz, when herbs could be administered in hospitals more, as opposed to outside of a hospital environment?
Yeah, I mean, in India and especially in Tibetan hospitals and Indian hospitals and things like that, they do have a blend of traditional herbal medicine alongside Western pharmaceutical medicine.
In the hospital?
In the hospitals,
okay, interesting. Because we went to India and we saw plenty of the pharmacies.
Yeah.
But they were just it was an old man sitting there with the scales.
Yeah.
And behind him was hundreds of different herbs and things like that. So everyone just, when the customer went in, they told him what was wrong, and he just packed up a load of different things, weighed them on the scales, and off they went. So for us back then, I suppose we wouldn't have had as much interest in herbs and things like that. So we're kind of oh my God, that's weird. Because I suppose we don't see that here. But looking back on it now, I just wish there was more of that here, because it's so effective. Going back years and years and years, there's so many years of proof that works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's interesting as well, because out there in the likes of India that Florence was talking about, they'd be known as witch doctors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or even, you heard the term quack, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was reading about where the term quack originated from. It's a Dutch word, I think, called quacksalver.
Okay.
And it originated from people selling alternative treatments that they weren't qualified to sell.
Okay.
And then they would advertise their products in a loud kind of voice, and people used to compare them talking with noisy ducks and geese.
Oh, right.
So that's where the term quack.
That's where it came from.
That's where it came from.
Interesting. Yeah.
But interesting then that quackery as well would be the fraudulent use of supposedly medical products. But how all that now, chiropractors are also known as quacks.
Yes.
Which is crazy when you think about it now. Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy that once upon a time those terms were used when it was, as you said, that was traditional medicine. Long time ago.
Well, if you look into the history of herbal medicine, there's always been this competition between the wealthy, university-educated doctors and herbalists were usually lay people and not organised into big, powerful institutions. And then when chemical medicine started coming along, obviously there's the incentive of profit and, it's just political
that's all,
influences, really. But there's no reason why both can't, live alongside each other happily.
Exactly.
Well, if there was an equal amount of advertisement and marketing for herbal medicine, chiropractic, homeopathy, you would see people then taking a lot more of a different view, as opposed to just doing the GP route all the time.
Well, you can't patent a herb, so it's
there's no money.
Exactly.
And I think it's great, all these documentaries now. I know most of them are based in the States, but they're just highlighting the fact for people that it is a massive industry.
Yeah.
Some of those documentaries about some of the medications.
I think when a doctor is trained, that's what they're taught to use, so it's kind of not their fault really. That's their training.
Exactly, yeah.
But it would be great if they had a module in natural therapies or something. And the problem is with research is that the placebo controlled double-blind trial, they work on a single chemical at a time. That's considered to be the gold standard of a test of whether something works or not. But of course, a herb has hundreds, sometimes thousands of constituents, and they act very differently on people depending on what the root cause is. So if they're looking for an arthritis herb, for example, it depends on the person. So not everyone is going to respond in that way. And if you start extracting chemicals from herbs, then they become like pharmaceutical medicine. So we all know, for example, that aspirin causes stomach bleeds. But the herb that it was isolated from, the salicylic acid?
Salicylic acid, yes.
From meadowsweet. And meadowsweet is actually a healing herb for the stomach. So, once you start isolating what they think are the active principles, then it changes the whole.
And that's where all pharmaceutical drugs come from.
Yes,
anyways,
a lot of them.
They're naturally occurring in nature.
Yeah,
and once they make their own little potion from them, they can patent that.
Yeah, they can synthesize it eventually as well. Yeah. So metformin, for example, the diabetic drug was originally isolated from goat's rue, and obviously digoxin from foxgloves, and
interesting. What sparked you? How did you get interested in this whole industry? Like, what was the impetus that got you to say, I want to go down this route?
I've always been interested in herbs. Even as a child, I would pick things out of the hedge and eat them, much to my mother's horror, because to her everything was poisonous. But I don't know, somehow I knew that it wasn't. So my brother and I, for example, would pick leaves off this plant that we called the lemonade plant, because it was like quite sharp and slightly lemony and salty, and it was really slake your thirst. And I found out years later that it was actually sorrel. And I used to make sandwiches out of nasturtium leaves out the garden. I hid it from, anyone who might see, but, nasturtium leaves are perfectly edible. And so I've always been interested and fascinated. I've always been fascinated by other cultures as well, and what they do and how they live their day-to-day lives and how they do their medicines and things like that. And so when I learned about different cultures that use plants as medicines, I was like, oh, so what do we use as medicines? And and it's just kind of gradually over the years just got more and more. Like when my children were small, I always treated them with herbs, if they had coughs and colds and chicken pox and things like that.
It's just a natural progression, really.
Yeah.
And 7 years part-time. And did you stay in your previous job while you were studying, Liz?
Yeah.
And that was in the UK.
And the school that I trained with, it's on a modular basis. So you do a lot of your work online. You write your work and you send it to your tutor, and there's like monthly tutorials, and then there's like a summer school which I'll be teaching at this year, and then there's like an annual meeting where there's like lots of seminars and things like that. So there's like minimum contact hours that you have to have, and a minimum number of supervised practice hours and things. But it's very easy to fit it around. Well, I say easy, it's really hard work. But, and the payment schedule, you can sort of fit that in. You don't have to pay up thousands up front and things. So, so it's a really accessible way to do it. And they're called the International Register of Consultant Herbalists. So there are literally people, internationally as well. So
fantastic.
And you officially opened in June last year?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and you have a website as well.
I have a website, and I have an Instagram feed and a Facebook page as well.
Yeah, I do see on the Facebook page. That's where I contacted you. I do see the different herbs, and I'm always interested in what you're mixing now.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to think up content all the time, because I just, it's hard to kind of imagine that people are going to be really interested in me in stirring this thing, and but actually people are.
They are. They really are, because and the more they see it, they'll kind of, okay, I've heard of this herb before. I keep seeing it being repeated. And, and that's how they'll eventually, they'll just make that kind of switch to think, okay, I might try this now the next time. I might go down to Liz and see if there's something. Yeah.
And Liz, you do tinctures, you do make teas,
yes,
creams, lotions,
yes.
So whatever kind of capsules. Is needed, capsules, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So it's kind of fairly flexible. There's loads more different preparations, but obviously you can't do everything. So.
Yeah. And is there any conditions that herbal medicine does not lend itself to? Like if someone came in and they had some condition and you said, this isn't the kind of area that I'm able to.
Yeah, if they've got like really severe high blood pressure, that's probably best treated pharmaceutically to bring it down. But then in a lot of instances, even people with like severe like heart conditions and things like that, I wouldn't recommend people doing this by themselves. Obviously, it would need professional overlook, but sometimes you can use herbs to support what the drugs are doing so that they can have lower doses and things like that. Because herbs are very nutritious as well, whereas pharmaceutical medicine has no nutrition in it at all. So sometimes it can complement things. So, for example, if someone's on steroids, there is one herb in particular that you can give them that makes the steroid more potent, so they can have a lower dose, and it helps them to come off the steroid as well. So anything that's like life-threatening really is you're probably better going to see the GP.
Yeah.
But
And just in terms of cooking, Liz, would there be any herbs, spices, things like that people should get used to using for their health?
As many as they possibly can.
So what's your favourites? What would you use?
Well, I love the Mediterranean herbs, but I also really like the spices. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have like really good circulation, you can put a bit of chili in your food if your stomach can tolerate it. A bit of ginger, things like that, and they're really good circulatory stimulants.
Tell us about garlic.
Garlic is amazing. Not everyone can take garlic.
Yeah. A lot of people don't like it.
Some people it can upset their tummy, but it's really good. I mean, it thins the blood. It's antimicrobial. It supports the liver. It's a little bit diaphoretic. It can make you sort of sweat a little bit. Kind of really what doesn't garlic do. So,
So garlic, chilies,
ginger, all the Mediterranean herbs, rosemary, thyme, oregano, all the old-fashioned herbs that we probably don't think of so much as like summer savoury, lovage, all those, they all add a certain something to the food. Just experiment and play, and
because the flavours as well is amazing.
It can really, really lift a meal from being a bit 2D to absolutely an explosion of 3D taste. So
and it's medicine as well,
and it's so good for you as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Who was that saying that food be thy medicine?
Absolutely, that was Hippocrates, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny one. We're just back from Sri Lanka. We were there like a month and a half ago now. But the food over there was amazing, and they use all different kinds of herbs that I suppose we wouldn't have even heard of before. But Carla's mum, she's mad into the cooking, and she was like, bring home some of them spices. So we went off to the supermarket anyway, and we brought home 5 kg of spices.
Wow, I'm so jealous.
So they're so potent. So we were coming through customs, and we never get stopped in customs, and your man pulled us over and he was like, have you any food in the bag? And I was like, I'm not going to lie, but she'll kill me if I come home without these spices. I was like, I've about 5 kg of spices. Have you meat? I was like, no, go on ahead. She said, I was like, thank God. But the one thing I noticed, we've used them a couple of times, they're so much more potent than some of the spices you'd get here.
Yeah.
We've noticed the last while, crushed chilies there's no potency with them at
They're
all.
just kind of, there's no flavour.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, is there anywhere you'd recommend to buy spices from, or, you know, that would be probably fresher?
Yeah, I would go to the sort of more ethnic shops and things, because they are really plugged into the spice trade and things. Quite often if you buy something on the supermarket, it's been sat in that jar for quite a long time.
Yes.
So if you you know, go to, like, I don't know, a shop run by Asian people or Chinese people, or you know, they will, because their turnover is higher, they will have fresher produce,
and then they could be even getting them from a source that is probably better.
Well, they would be selling what they use in that for themselves. So
good tips. So what else? Oh, you mentioned the home, the course there for people that want to learn how to use herbs and stuff and grow herbs at home.
Yeah.
So I saw on your website you were running one. It just recently finished in June.
Yeah.
Will you have another one of those?
I probably won't do a course, but I'll probably break it up into day workshops and things, because a little bit more, because it's difficult to commit for 6 weeks, 6 Saturdays in a row. So so I'll probably do, you know, like a day on
day workshops.
A day on making teas, or a day on making creams, or something like that.
More
fantastic.
Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on that we haven't talked about, Liz, before we wrap it up?
Gosh, let me just have a think.
Take your time.
You were asking just now about people incorporating herbs into their day-to-day life, but another side of that would be to start doing things as naturally as possible. So just look at what you're putting on your body, your shower gel, your shampoo, stuff like that. You know, the plug-ins, definitely no. You're much better off getting like a little evaporator thing and using essential oils. Just take a little bit of an assessment of the amount of chemicals that you're using in your house, because they're really not good for us, and our body has to detox everything.
Especially your skin, the biggest organ in the body. People don't realise that everything is getting absorbed.
Absolutely, and then drink 8 glasses of water a day, have a healthy diet, whatever that means for you, you know, whether you're vegan or vegetarian or you eat meat or whatever. Eat the best quality food that you can afford to buy, ideally organic, but obviously everyone can't afford organic. If you've got space, grow a few of your own veggies. That can really help. Bit of exercise every day, just a 20-minute walk a day can really be life-changing.
Interesting how all food was at one time organic.
It was,
and now it's the reverse, like the medicine.
I really hate the fact we have to pay people not to spray our stuff.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
I know.
But
it's also interesting as well when it comes to the drinking water, how there's a lot of talk about fluoride, and if you distill your water, of course there's no fluoride in it, but then if you take a shower, your skin is the biggest absorber, it's the biggest organ, it's going to absorb some of that water, so you really can't like escape everything. You just, as you said, you have to find a balance.
Just do your best. There's no point in getting really anxious about it, because anxiety and stress is like a real insidious influence on your health. So just, you know, have a look around, see what you're doing. Is there anything I can change? Is there anything I can improve? Maybe. And
some changes will be really significant, but very easy to do at the same time, I'd imagine.
If you do lots of small changes, it has a really big impact.
Compound effect.
And if you get cough and cold, if your kids get cough and cold, or you get like a catarrhal sort of symptom, just stay off the dairy for a bit. And then when it goes away, then you can introduce it back in if you want to. And
some people feel so good without it that they don't. You know, that's the reality.
And if you want to go vegan, please make sure that you research the nutrition and you have the proper nutrition. B12. B12, protein sources.
There's actually a study that shows that not only plant-based vegans are deficient in B12, but 8% of the population, because B12 is it's a bacteria instead of, people think it's a vitamin, and it's not in the soil as much as it was because, again, they're spraying the plants. And
same with all the minerals.
Yeah.
But you need really good digestion to extract B12. So your stomach makes a chemical that helps you to extract B12. So if you have low stomach acid or your digestion isn't working properly, you're not going to absorb your nutrients.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And B12 is vital for brain health.
Yeah. Nervous system. Yeah, definitely.
It's not a nice condition to be in the set if you're low on B12. You'll know about it.
You can get permanent nerve damage. But not to get anxious about it. It's it is easily available in things like meat and eggs and stuff like that. But I think in fortified yeast, those yeast flakes that you can put on the cheesy things. Nutritional yeast.
In B12 actually.
And you can take supplements if you need to, but it's really important, whatever diet you're consuming, to just learn a little bit about nutrition and make sure that you're having a proper balanced diet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah,
well, that's great. I think we can call it a day on that. It's been fascinating talking to you, Liz. Thanks very much for coming in.
Well, thanks very much for having me.
We're delighted.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll put a link to your website on the post that goes along with this, and
keep an eye on the Facebook page for these day courses.
Yes,
I think everyone can benefit from learning how to make teas and things like that. So.
Exactly. Thanks very much for all your info, Liz.
Thank you,
my
Liz.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's it for this episode, folks. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you like the content, we'd really appreciate it if you could share it. You can follow us on Facebook by searching for Voices of Boyle, and you can also contact us on our website by visiting voicesofboyle.com. We're always looking for new guests, so if you'd like to be on the show, or if you know someone who you'd like to join us, please reach out to us via our Facebook page or website. Thanks very much, and we'll chat to you again soon.